Good morning. We're recording today from our Leduc office. Very sunny day outside, but here we have a wonderful guest to talk and chat about our Plot to Field program. So just to give you a little introduction, Plot to Field program has been with the organization since 2017, and I joined in as the lead for the program since 2018 and have been working. What this program is about is having large-scale experiments on actual farmer fields and getting our research ideas out there, collecting data on them, and having a very unique participation of farmer and agronomists, a scientist, and extension staff from Alberta Pulse Growers coming all together and trying to get details on a certain experiment that we were aiming for. So if I may welcome Mr. J.P. Pettyjohn, and he's from Lakeland College, and as well as an independent agronomist who works with us. Take it away, J.P.
Thank you for having me here.
Yes, wonderful.
It's interesting, from your perspective, it's, we did our first field year in 2017, but the genesis of this goes back many years before that when Jen Walker first had the idea in about 2013.
Right.
And I know I had conversations with her in 2014 about this. And then our first, I think, major formal meetings in developing protocols towards the field scale trials was 2016.
Yes.
Way
before
we
me,
met
for
here.
sure.
We met in Lacombe, and we had quite a large meeting with a lot of researchers, a bunch of agronomists, technicians like myself, that discussed how we were going to make it successful, because at that point in time we had, I would say, all of us, that general idea that less than 50% of field scale trials were giving us data that was actually dependable. And we felt that the cost of field scale trialing being so high that wasn't good enough, and yet it was something that producers really wanted and valued. So we were trying to come up with a way to ensure that field scale trials gave us better and more dependable data.
How do you think you choose your participants?
To be honest, it's a kind of a combination of some personal knowledge about a producer, and of course I do solicit from other people kind of almost like references as to how a producer might be. A couple of things that are really important, I think, in a producer for something like this is their ability to take the time to do it. That means they also have to be organized. They have to not have so much on the go that they can't afford to take one extra day, for instance. My job as the agronomist, as is my fellow agronomist, is to ensure that the trials can be either seeded or the treatments applied in a reasonable amount of time without, massive challenges. So, we work with the research scientists to help develop a trial that would allow us to, we try to make sure it's simple enough that it can be done within a reasonable amount of time. I think that's really key. But on the producer end of things, I'm looking for somebody who has an actual enthusiasm into knowing the truth,
Right.
who isn't one that just wants to look at anecdotal evidence as the basis of their main decisions, that they want to really have a good exploration as to how these things work, and generally are willing to take that time. Those are probably the two main components that would make me willing to work with a producer.
We need a very homogeneous kind of, it's not a small plot research, so we cannot go into the intricate details, but maintaining that homogeneity, that
Right.
Even if we have 10 sites throughout Alberta for a program, we still want them to be homogeneous in one way or the other for the sake of the randomization and the replication that we
Right.
need for our trials to be very scientifically sound, so that we're collecting the data that we can actually be representative of the experiment, as
Right.
in the site years for that year. So is that an easy thing on part of the farmer to just do what we ask them? Is this something that you have?
It is somewhat difficult some years to find a location that will fit a particular trial, because it does take up a lot of acres. With large equipment, say, we're on a 60-foot wide drill and we've got 12 treatments, we need over 700 feet that should have reasonable, I wouldn't say flatland necessarily, but it should have some consistency within it, whether it's going up a slope or if it has hills in it, that the hills spread across the entire trial so that we're not having a hill in the middle of the trial, but we've got some on a north facing slope, some on a south facing slope. That's going to have some, ramifications on
But
how
that's when randomization kicks in and we
Right.
randomize our plots.
Right,
So,
if we can do it. So we have to work together, and it starts, usually we start early in the spring once they've got more of their plans finalized on what fields, and they'll tell me 2 or 3 fields. I'll go and scout them, and then I get back to them as to which fields, and then we typically would then go together and look at the field that I'm most interested in. The number of replications does become a bit of a limiting factor because at 6 treatments, rather, not so many of the replications, but number of treatments by replications, just to fit them in on the same parcel of land. Especially when you're in the area that I'm in Vermilion, where we do have lots of pretty rolling morainal type depositions for land development, so it's quite rolling hills. A little bit different than when I get over to Stony Plain, where we definitely have areas that are more flat. I mean, there's hills in that area too, but we typically can find bigger stretches or bigger, more open land. Rob in the south, he can get large plots of 1.4 acres per plot.
Right.
Where I'm lucky if I can get half an acre per plot, because that's just getting it fit in within the landscape is just that challenge.
But that's the beauty of this whole program, that you have such a wide landscape throughout the province, and you're kind of accommodating for very south of Alberta with irrigation sometimes, and then there's this central pocket, and then the north, and it's all different soil zones, all different type of soil actually. Were there things that you learned that made it easier or harder the coming years?
I'd say that our expectations of what was going to happen actually worked out pretty close to what we were looking for.
Yeah.
The producers were looking to us as agronomists to be there, to help with the setup, to ensure that things, plots were set out correctly, the treatments were calibrated correctly, and we worked with them. And I think what they got to see was how actually little time it took extra. What was really good, I think, and what we learned was that because the producers know their equipment really well, and I know what we need to do for the experiment, we were able to work well together, and we could get through quite quickly. Yeah.
Well, the key is the data that we get. And some years we have had like 40 site years worth of data collected within 3 years of that seeding rate experiment, and we layered on a few questions with Megan Venkowski, which is the federal scientist in insect side of things. So we were able to grab so much of data that's otherwise in a small plot world a dream, I guess, with having that many different kind of soil zones and different farming practices. So the whole idea, I think, at the end remains that a farmer is able to conduct those trials in their own farm.
Right.
With the sense of power coming in that their test is valid.
Yeah, definitely. I think over these last few years, where I see the benefit of these plot to field, being able to showcase these results at a field scale level gives more confidence to the producers that that's what they can expect to have happen. I think that small plot data is still undeniably great, simply because we do have far greater chance of our variation being very small within the landscape. Taking it from those small plots, so finding those 2 or 3 treatments that we know gave us our best, benefit, then taking those couple of treatments, comparing that to a check, whether that's, just a standard producer or whether that's a, zero rate, depending on what you're testing, then allows us to take that into that variable field and say, okay, well, at a field scale, will we still get the results we're expecting from the small plot? And what I can see then by having multiple sites across the province, allows us to say, oh, you know what? In the north, it does work really well, but in
Yeah.
that dry, it's just too limiting with
That can
moisture,
come
and
back.
that's,
Yeah, that
you
can
know,
come
it's,
back to the best management
yeah,
practices again. There might be a
absolutely.
difference between south and north, and what
Yeah.
might be working on a farm closer to Stony Plain might not be something for the Lethbridge area.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
so,
acceptable, and that's valid
yeah,
reasoning.
and
But
that's what gets me excited. And
mhm.
when I think back on my career and going back, into the kind of late 2010, early 2010s, we were looking at doing more field scale, and it had been a problematic to do field scale at that time because of our, just staking it out and trying to get everything organized. This is just at the start when a lot of people were getting GPS directed, automatic steering on their equipment. And we could see, I came from a farm background, and we had just converted all of our equipment to auto steer. And taking that leap ahead in the research side, using auto steer as our method of being able to do these treatments in a very predictable and easy fashion was what basically it changed for me the face of large scale research. The convenience of it, the ability to seed exactly where we want to seed the different treatments without having to stake, spending the days of staking that we would
Right.
do for a large scale trial. We'd have no staking, we'd just have a map, and we could just seed to the map.
Right.
Just changed the whole dynamic, basically changed the world of field scale research.
I think I'm going to bring the science back in, but this having that scientist part involved as well. They get
Right.
to get that data that's already happening in form of an experiment.
Mm.
They get to sit in front of a computer and analyze and see
Right.
what the pattern is, what is the data telling us in conjugation of what we saw in the weather patterns, what we saw in the soil tests, and some sort of disease that happened that year, or a drought, or maybe extra water in the soil.
Oh,
So all
absolutely.
of that playing together to bring the bigger picture,
Mhm.
and that also happening in terms of few years, so
Right.
that your data is robust enough.
Yep.
I think that's the essence of the whole program, and it's the
Yeah,
most
it's
wonderful
not
part.
just about collecting
Mhm.
it. It is having that experienced scientist who can look at that data, uh, do the statistics on it, do the interpretations, look at correlations, try to find why did it happen, why didn't it happen. Um, I think it just every step of the way makes this give us enough information that producers can make more financially plausible decisions
Right.
on farm.
So with this program, especially, farmers are our center in the way that they also give us the levy to do this kind of research,
Yeah.
and then they are doing it. They're integral to this whole
Oh, absolutely.
situation. What is it for the farmer?
Well, if I speak for the producers that are actually conducting the trials, they're getting to witness it firsthand. When they look at this data and they feel that there's much more truth to it, they're more confident. And without doing it with multiple farmers, using the exact same protocols, following the same treatments, we'll never get that information because we can't have, well, one farmer couldn't afford to do it for himself on enough times on enough fields, but by splitting that amongst a bunch of farmers, we get a robust set of data that can give us more conclusions, or stronger conclusions at least, as to the benefits or not. I mean, if it doesn't make us a reasonable profit, we can't find benefits to doing something like Piola,
It has to fit
that's
well with
that's still a
economics too,
win to a
right?
farmer, because then that takes away that doubt that either it does or does not work. And I think then farmers will be more likely to engage in it if we have 10 farmers and 8 of them go, I'm going to continue doing this.
Do you think that the way this program is running so far, it can be a vessel for something bigger or something different in the future as well?
What I can see going forward, if we had 4 different research projects that were testing, these 4 different, whatever it is, and we're got 40 or 50 producers involved, we can then gain a lot more knowledge and hopefully by not just the knowledge. Knowledge is great, but if we gain this knowledge, we also need to have adoption of those practices or those treatments or whatever it is we're looking for. And I feel like if we get more farmers involved that are willing to work on these projects, and because we have, like I say, if 10 producers across a province work on a single project, within 3 years we have enough data to make conclusions or draw strong conclusions from. That at that point, we then can, and I would expect to see higher rates of adoption of practices or
Faster too.
faster than we do when we just use small plot design for it.
Well,
Less
small
tillage
plot
or-
is always going to be there. When we talk about bigger and better, more involvement,
right.
a more opportunity for KTT, which is the knowledge transfer, in form of like, we engage more people during our actual experiment times, and we talk on the land itself when we're looking at an experiment. That's most valuable to me,
Right.
because that's my take-home message. That's what I'm looking at. People standing in front of me telling me what went wrong, what could have been done better, or what essence of the whole experiment is to them.
Yes.
Whether it's returns in terms of economics, or whether it's looking at their, for example, the intercropping experiment, it's more like soil health at the same time,
Right.
looking at some nitrogen conservation. Can we grow two crops together?
Right.
So,
Well, I think, the knowledge transfer that we could see there really comes down to the fact that we have these producers doing it. And if they're the ones that would say support it, they've done it, we can show it by the numbers, and they in turn say that, this is something we would want to do more on our farm because of the numbers and because we've learned this, learned how to be successful with it, then I think, again, that transfer to other producers is going to be much higher than if we're trying to do it from that small plot only situation.
right.
Because I think right now the small plots show pretty strong evidence that an intercropping can work. But now taking it to field scale and ensuring that we can, logistically do it, what other problems are there within, if we're talking doing 500 acres, 1,000 acres of this, can we be successful with that as well? Because there's other things other than just money involved,
Right.
Labor, time, equipment, whatnot. There's many things that are
Right.
that would factor in that
And
we
how
would be
many
able to
times-
determine through a field scale trial that
Right.
you can't through small plot.
And one thing that you think is very pivotal in success of such a
Well,
program?
what I think where the real success in this is the fact that we are using money. It is the producers' money that producers are getting to help us conduct this experiment. When I talk with my producers, it is probably the one reason that they're willing to invest that time is because they're being compensated. When they're approached by other organizations that say, we want you to do this, we want you to invest that time, but there's no money involved, the producers feel like, at least my guys, like they look at it and they go, why would I do that? And everybody else benefits, but I'm the one that's it's costing. And I think there's a frustration with that, given how little time they have. Where everything is. Most farms are maxing out on their labor. Right. Probably don't have enough labor. I think that's one of their biggest problems. So ensuring that they're getting compensated, I think, gives them the peace of mind that that they're being valued for what they're doing. I work with these guys and they're happy to do it. There's no problems, and we're getting successful data. And having successful data is key to making good decisions. Wonderful. When you've got bad data and you're going to make decisions off of that, everybody loses. I truly believe that field scale data is essential in determining what practices and what are our best management directives should be when it comes to improving not just the sustainability but the stability of the farm long term, ensuring that our soils stay healthy, ensuring that we are protecting the greater environment. Even from a social perspective, I think farmers are more aware these days that what they do in say matters to everybody generally. And they do not want to be told how to farm. They want to be able to do what they need to do. But if they're basing decisions on bad data or no data or just sales reps data, we might be doing things that cause harm.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh,
and to your
my
office.
pleasure to be here for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Thank you.